So speaking about some of the comparisons we have with Apple, there, we wanted to jump into some of Apple's App Store policies. So
Oh, yes. So
yeah,
Apple has been under big flack for their App Store policies, and in my opinion, some of the flack has been really dumb.
agreed. Yeah, yeah. Some of it's been
Um,
stupid.
However, there's been a big question about why the xCloud beta only had one game on iOS, whereas
Hmm.
it had most all of the games on Android
Right.
in the beta. So you could only do the iCloud beta or the xCloud beta on iOS with Halo Master Chief Collection and not any other game.
Yep.
And people were like, I think it was Master Chief. It's one of the Halo games. People were like, why? And also, why isn't Stadia available? And why isn't PlayStation Now available? And why isn't
Hmm.
any other game streaming service available?
I don't even know if
Well,
Steam Link is.
Steam Link was not for a while, but
That's
they
right. There
did
was a
get
big
approval.
war. Yeah, yeah.
They got approval because Steam Link is not streaming services or streaming games from the cloud, but streaming games from your device.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it falls more under remote desktop service than it
Hmm.
does cloud gaming service,
Right. Okay.
which is an odd distinction because of the end result. So essentially, the reason that Apple is not allowing these game streaming services for now, I do think that this is all going to change.
Probably.
Um, but the reason that they are not allowing it is because they cannot test and approve individual games. And that
Yeah.
makes relative sense. Their App Store policy is that they need to test every game on their platform and every app on their platform. And so it would be reasonable that if you could just stream that game or app, you could bypass their policies. And so I think that is the Apple logic behind not allowing it. Because let's say they,
Why
you
doesn't
know,
Apple just test every game like they do
well,
with apps? Right.
the issue for those wondering that question legitimately is that they if if Microsoft adds a game to xCloud, it does not require a software update for xCloud.
Yep.
And so they don't test that upon approval. If you submit an update as an app developer to Apple, Apple has to approve that. But if you're not updating your app, there's nothing for them to approve. There's no change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so unless they were to constantly be policing your app, which Apple generally doesn't do unless some big issue comes up, they don't generally go back and look at apps they've already approved because they
Hmm.
would assume they've approved them correctly.
Yeah.
Um, they don't. They just don't bother, and that makes sense from a I guess employee workforce standpoint. You don't want to have your employees have to not just approve every app and every update, but then go back and check literally everything.
Hmm.
Um, However, the issue is that this kind of hits a point similar to Netflix, for example. So books, streaming services, music services all function as essentially portals for other content. And Apple has specific rules in place for those portals of content. Well, game streaming is just a portal for content.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, from my understanding, while some of the interactive content is not enabled on Netflix for iOS and for tvOS, that is not an App Store policy. That is Netflix having not done the work to enable them on those platforms.
Hmm.
Theoretically, like Minecraft on Netflix, which is an interactive content, is available on there. So
Yeah.
why, from Apple's point of view, why is that different than Gears of War?
Right. Right.
Why is that different than Forza? Um, you know, like they're both interactive entertainment content.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think Apple's probably just uh before Stadia and xCloud, they probably just weren't concerned enough about PlayStation Now, which was trash in the past. It's gotten way better, but
Yeah.
because PlayStation hasn't made like a big show off of their service or like a rebranding, nobody takes it seriously.
Yeah.
And all of the other previous game streaming services, Gaikai, GeForce Now's betas and stuff, nobody ever took seriously. So like, why would Apple? But now that we have, I guess Stadia, which still nobody takes seriously because it's kind of a joke,
It's so
but
bad. Kind of. Totally is a joke.
xCloud, which in my opinion is much more of like the first like
real.
real game streaming service,
I agree entirely. Yeah.
they're now having to address this policy, and I think that that's why we're going to see some change. Is that they're now having to reevaluate
Yeah.
um, the balancing act that they're going to have to find, and they've found this with Netflix. They found this with Prime Now. They found this with Hulu, YouTube, everything. Is how do you ensure that you're not playing favorites on the big names while ensuring that the apps enforce your policies? Obviously, like with video streaming services, you don't want, from Apple's point of view, I guess, not necessarily a consumer's point of view, because some consumers would love this, but you don't want a video streaming service on the App Store that also allows porn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of games that are near porn or like very, very sexual that are on Steam, for example.
Oh yeah.
But you can stream those games from your computer to your iPhone, but you can't stream Forza from your Xbox or from xCloud to
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
iPhone. Where does that make sense? And so it's like they need to
Right.
figure out their policy for that. And I think that my guess is within 3 months, xCloud will be approved fully.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to happen at some point, and it's going to show that this kind of stuff is possible to not be completely horrible the way Stadia has been. We'll see, but I have a lot more confidence in xCloud. I feel like Google kind of jumped up one day and was like, hey, we're releasing this thing and it's going to be better than everybody's, and we're releasing it in 6 months, and then they released it and it was terrible. And Microsoft's been working on this for a really long time.
Yeah. Well, and then the
yeah.
other thing with the comparison between xCloud and Stadia is that Microsoft didn't promise a bunch of features
Yeah.
that would be there relatively quickly that haven't shown up like 6 months or a year later.
Yeah.
Whereas
Oh,
almost
man.
every feature besides simply being able to play games on Stadia is non-existent.
The Wi-Fi controller support crap still doesn't exist.
It does only on very specific devices, only on Chromecast
Right.
and Chromebooks, I think.
Yeah. So I guess what I mean is, like, it doesn't exist to the extent they thought they talked like it would.
But in my opinion, that's harder to implement than YouTube integration, and they don't have the ability to stream Stadia games to YouTube.
I can't even.
How?
Yeah, dude, it's bad. I don't get it. I really don't. I hope xCloud's good. I mean, obviously there's still the inherent latency issues that you just can't get rid of, but
I mean, I think though that one of the things with xCloud that's going to be helpful is this obviously won't be helpful for well, it will be in some regards, but not as much for like when you're actually trying to play and you're out and about.
Mm-hmm.
But similar to PlayStation and their game streaming, where they've already had remote play for years, where you could play from your PlayStation 3 even to your PlayStation Portable. And so that on local Wi-Fi, like from Xbox to your Android phone or iPhone eventually,
yes,
will be fantastic if you want to have a Switch-esque experience where you can just play games in your room and your Xbox is in the living room.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and if they can implement that in a way where even when you're on external networks, it could potentially still use your home console, and then it can run a quick latency test. Yeah, and just figure out, your console is going to be lower latency connection right now than xCloud's server services, so we'll connect you to your console, and that's going to help out too.
Microsoft, I mean, they haven't said it in that way where it would be like latency checking, but they've already said like you will be able to use your Xbox as essentially your like host. And my guess as to exactly how they'll do that is if you have Game Pass Ultimate, it'll do a latency check for which one would be better. And if you don't have Game Pass Ultimate, because Game Pass Ultimate includes xCloud,
right?
If you don't have that, then you'll be able to stream from your Xbox to your phone or tablet or whatever, assuming you own the game. And so it's like xCloud will be for Game Pass, and then non-xCloud will be from your console only. Yeah,
and I think that makes sense. And that I don't know, it's interesting to see things move in this direction. And then of course we have things like keyboard and mouse support for iPad. So then potentially you could have like an iPad that you're playing, console or PC level games on with just a little bit of extra latency.
Yeah, I mean, already with iOS 14, though, you'll be able to play games like Fortnite at 120 FPS on your iPad with keyboard and mouse.
This is true, yeah. But what I mean is obviously games like Halo and stuff that are going to be more difficult to run.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see that as a possibility is kind of crazy, you know. And obviously for shooters and stuff like that, it's a little more important to have lower latency. But for story-based games, it's totally usable. You know, even Stadia's latency when it's not having problems, which it usually is, but when it's not, it's playable. You know, for a not shooter game, but playing something like The Witcher or whatever, right? Or maybe Cyberpunk
Yeah.
when that comes out. All that's kind of shooter, but you get the point. You know, and so like I personally could see myself using my iPad as a replacement gaming PC using a streaming service if it actually wasn't garbage like Stadia is. Because when I'm out on the go, I'm not going to care as much about playing something that is, you know, latency dependent or is, you know, peripheral dependent like Elite Dangerous or whatever.
Yeah, we just need Apple to change their App Store policies.
Yes, yes. And it'll be
Which,
interesting because like I'm going to be trying this myself. It'll be interesting to see what it's like.
yeah, and it's like this is the worst time for Apple's App Store policies to be coming up in such a big way with like such a big type of product.
Yeah.
Because of all of the legal issues that they're facing.
Right.
And like I really hate the discussion around App Store policies and stuff because like there are legitimate issues that the App Store policies have brought forth, and there's legitimate discussions to be had about Apple's 30% cut, and like that's all fine and dandy, but I really really dislike how so many people are talking about how we just need to make it so that Apple allows another app store, as if that will fix a damn thing. Because you know what hasn't changed any of Google's policies? The app stores on Android with fucking 1% market share. You really think that Apple users are going to be more likely to download a fucking alternate app store than Google users? No. No. And so if it's not going to change Google's stance on anything, how the fuck do people think it's going to change Apple's stance? We're wasting our time. We're wasting potential regulatory changes on trying to force Apple to do that change when we could be implementing real change that will actually matter.
Yeah, it's true. There's too
Why?
much conversation around it.
I don't get it. Even, Tim Sweeney, Tim Sweeney's been harping on Apple hard, and I get it. There's some issues he has because Fortnite could make a lot more money if they didn't have to use the App Store. But here's the thing. Fortnite, for all it, yes, sure, initially it launched off the Play Store. It still caved and got on the Play Store.
Yeah.
And also, if anyone was to ever prove that an alternate app store could work on a mobile platform, it would be Tim Sweeney, because he could make Epic Store for Android and get a bunch of games to join it with a 12% cut like they did Epic Store. They could buy exclusives, do whatever, prove to people that it can work, and then go after Apple for it. But if you can't do that on Android, then there's no way it's going to work on iOS. So until you've proven that, why waste your time trying to push for alternate app stores that won't help?
Yeah, they won't make a difference. It's weird.
Push for policies that will actually matter and stop wasting time on things that won't.
There's a little too much of that going on in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, fun. Oh, man. Well, I think that's pretty much it when it comes to those App Store policies there. So